The series begins with a rich man named Lee Guk-cheol, who is from a very wealthy family. Interestingly, he is blind but has an incredible superpower. He can hear everything around him. This allows him to know when his servants are gossiping about him or trying to trick him, like serving him leftover food or planning to steal his valuable possessions. When he catches them in the act, he becomes furious, throws the food on the table, and fires the two waiters on the spot. Later, while they are having a meal together, young Mano scolds him, saying he's been firing too many maids lately and that it's going too far. The next day, Cheol asks his lawyer Oh Chung-dong to be extra careful because, in a couple of months, he will come of age and take charge of all his parents' money and properties. He's worried that Mano might try to harm him to get her hands on his inheritance. You see, there was an accident before that killed Cheol's parents and left him blind, and guess who benefited the most from that? Yes, Mano, because she could easily gain control of their property. At Cheol's place, a new girl named Sha Junin shows up, introducing herself as the new maid. It turns out that Cheol recognizes her voice from a recent fight they had at the mall. When he asks her if they've met before, she admits it, fearing she might lose her job if she lies. After a while, Cheol thinks Junin would make a good maid, but then he overhears Mano telling her to spy on him. This really ticks him off, so he fires Junin on the spot. She is confused and annoyed, saying that Cheol's life is sad not because he can't see, but because of his bad attitude toward people. When she leaves, Cheol becomes so angry that he throws his coffee table. No one had ever dared to criticize him like that before. In the morning, Cheol gets a call from his company's secretary, Ok Cham, who informs him that Mano is selling the family hospital. Cheol immediately calls Chamong to talk about it, but when Chamong arrives home, he is already on Mano's side and locks Cheol up to prevent him from interfering with the hospital deal. However, Cheol refuses to give up. He gets resourceful, takes a pair of scissors, makes a rope out of his blanket, and tries to escape through the window. He heads to the street, hoping to catch a ride, but sadly no one stops for him, and he feels frustrated. Just then, Junin comes along on her motorcycle, noticing Cheol and stopping to tell him that he won't get a ride just standing there. Seeing her, Cheol gets annoyed and tells her to leave. Soon after, he starts walking into the road and almost gets hit by a car. Thankfully, Junin comes back to help him. She takes him to his family's company office on her motorcycle. Since it's his first time on a bike, he holds on tightly to Junin because he's scared of falling. Meanwhile, Mano is in the middle of signing the papers to sell the hospital when suddenly Cheol, accompanied by Junin, bursts into the room. He yells that the sale agreement is invalid because he hasn't agreed to it. Mano gets really angry with him, and because of his outburst, the buyer cancels the deal and leaves. Cheol then confronts Mano, questioning if she will keep framing him. He tells her that he heard his mother mention her name before she died. This confuses Mano, and she wonders why he suspects her of killing his parents. Later, in her study, Mano can't stop thinking about Cheol's accusation. She gets information from Cheram that her husband, Bayan Ilj, was the one who actually killed Cheol's parents. Shocked by this revelation, she rushes to Ilj's study and overhears him talking on the phone about pushing Cheol's parents' car into a ravine. At that moment, Mano can't believe what her husband has done, so she threatens to reopen the investigation into the accident. But Ilj reveals that he knows about her sneaky actions too, like bribing a doctor to fake Cheol's examination so that his blindness couldn't be cured. A little later, Mano becomes suspicious of her husband and tells Cheram to spy on him, wanting evidence of his meetings with his mistress, Wang Jiao, who happens to be Mano's close friend. When Cheram finds proof, Mano confronts her husband and Jiao. In a fit of anger, she even thinks about reporting them to the police. But Jiao tries to stop her, and unfortunately, during the argument, Mano gets pushed and falls down the stairs, leading to her death. Shocked by what happened, Ilj decides to hide his wife's body in the car trunk. He contacts an assassin named Gaj, who has a long criminal record. At that time, Ilj asks Gaj to call Cheol and lure him to the hospital's pathology lab, intending to frame Cheol for his wife's death. When Cheol learns that Gaj knows who killed his parents, he rushes to the pathology lab with Junin by his side. As they arrive, Gaj activates a virus and locks Cheol and Junin inside the lab. At that moment, Cheol tries to find the virus vaccine but only finds one dose. He plans to inject Junin, but she takes the vaccine and injects it into him instead. After a while, Cheol wakes up in the hospital, where Ilj is waiting for him. But instead of showing concern, Ilj accuses Cheol of hiring an assassin to kill Mano, leading to Cheol's arrest and imprisonment. Little does he know that Gaj is in the same prison as him. One time, Cheol hears about a plot to kill him but manages to avoid it. Later on, an inmate named Parcadio, who is often harassed by Gaj, warns Cheol that Gaj and the others are planning to kill him too. So Cheol and Swan team up to frame Gaj. Following his advice, Cheol goes to the bathroom where Gaj is and makes it look like Gaj is about to attack him. At the same time, Swan calls the prison official and claims that Gaj is dangerous, leading to Gaj being drugged because everyone thinks he's trying to harm Cheol. After waking up, Gaj is really scared to face Cheol. His condition worsens, and he suspects he might have caught the virus from the lab at the previous hospital. At that time, Gaj begs Cheol to help him, knowing that Cheol is the only one vaccinated against the virus. Hearing Gaj's plea, Cheol agrees to help, but on one condition: Gaj must tell him who ordered him to frame Cheol. Now, Cheol already knows that his uncle is behind the entire attempted murder plan. He plans to seek help from Prosecutor Park, who is handling his case, once he gets out of jail and goes to the hospital for treatment. He believes Park will reinvestigate everything. But unexpectedly, Ilj bribes Park and asks him to send Cheol to a mental hospital instead. However, Cheol previously overheard their plans, which makes him even more worried about what will happen to him. Late at night, Charing shows up at the hospital to help Cheol escape. Soon after, they get into a car, but the police start chasing them. The driver tells Cheol to get out, and he tries to hail a taxi, but Ilj spots him and pretends to be a cab driver, taking Cheol away. Shortly after, Charing calls Cheol, warning him that he's in Ilj's car. She then follows them and forces them to stop on a bridge. At that time, Cheol tries to escape, and when he's cornered at the edge of the bridge, he jumps into the river rather than let his uncle catch him. He swears to come back and seek revenge on Ilj. The next morning, Cheol wakes up among some trash and, from then on, lives as a beggar. After several years, he bumps into a woman at a subway station and recognizes her as Cheram, but she denies it and leaves. Later, while busking on the street, some street children tell him that his cardboard house was destroyed by thugs. Shortly after, Cheol rushes home and manages to stop the thugs from taking the money he collected for his eye surgery. Not long after, the police arrive and the thugs run away. Suddenly, Cheram arrives and asks Cheol to help her create a virus vaccine since he's the only one injected with it. In return, she promises to give him a new identity and send him to America for further studies. She also pledges to help him get revenge on Ilj by paying for Cheol's eye surgery and plastic surgery. After the operation, Cheol changes his name to Calm Kaitan and goes to America to study for 5 years. Meanwhile, Wang Janan, who is Ilj's father-in-law, becomes a member of parliament, and Ilj himself is now the head of the legal team at Dota Group, a company owned by Do Chong, a Korean conglomerate. At that time, Ilj is not happy with his position, so he starts looking for Do Chong's illegitimate son, Dong-woo, and secretly guides the young man, intending to use him as a weapon against Chong. On the other hand, Junin, who now goes by the name Osin, tries to get a job at Dota Group. At the same time, Heen, accompanied by Cheram, also comes to apply for the same job and accidentally bumps into Osun. When Kan hears her voice, he thinks she's Junin, but he's mistaken because she changed her name. Not long after, Osun's friend Ganwoo calls her by her new name too, adding to the confusion. Soon after, the three of them take the written exam together, and Osun seems to struggle with the questions. On the other hand, Ganwoo answers everything with ease because Ilj had given him the questions in advance. Meanwhile, Kan, with his abilities, also does well on the test. Eventually, all three of them pass the honesty test and move on to the next round, which requires living together in a dormitory for training before finding out who will be accepted at Dodo Company. Once everyone settles into the dormitory, Taekwon, the team leader in charge of the recruitment process, gives them a heads up that over half of them will be eliminated. Chung, who greeted them via video call, promises a big cash prize for the participant who ranks first. On the other hand, Kan gets advice from Chae-rong that he should join the business department for an easier path to seek revenge. Then, as the rankings are revealed, Ganwoo always seems to be in the lead thanks to the test information he got from Ilj. Soon after, Kaiton follows in second place, while Osun is at the bottom. Ganwoo doesn't miss the chance to mock Osun about her low ranking. Aside from academics, the Dodo Group's recruitment includes military training and physical fitness tests. At that time, Kan and Ganwoo have similar physical abilities, while Osun struggles in this area. Meanwhile, Ilj notices that Kan could be a threat to Ganwoo, so he tries to get rid of him using sneaky tactics. One day, Kan finds a ballpoint pen with a hidden camera inside. Right at that moment, Ilj shows up for an inspection, and Kan gets caught with a tape recorder, leading to an interrogation. Surprisingly, Kan stays calm because he has support from Chong's wife, Gun, who knows Chong. Thanks to Gun, Ilj can't get Kaiton fired. During the training, Osun gets really tired from all the physical exercises and ends up having a nosebleed. Later, they have to form cooking teams to show their teamwork skills. Shortly after, Kan immediately joins Yami's team, while Osun is left without a team. Then the committee asks several participants, including Ganwoo, to join Osun's team. During the cooking competition, Osun's team decides to make Chong's favorite dish. On the other hand, Kan's team frustrates him because they can't cook, and their dishes turn out awful. Meanwhile, Ganwoo is thrilled as his team's dishes impress the judges. On another occasion, Ganwoo meets Ilj secretly, who wants to give him answers for the next test, but Ganwoo insists on competing based on his own abilities. At that moment, Ilj tries to persuade him to stay in the top spot if he wants to be considered the best participant in the recruitment. Eventually, Ganwoo accepts the answer sheet and regains the top rank in the next exam. Meanwhile, Osun improves her rank by 10 positions, making her happy. Kan starts getting suspicious of Ganwoo's top ranking because he doesn't seem to work as hard as the other participants while they're in the dormitory. Later, martial arts training begins, and Ganwoo easily wins his fight, partly because his female opponent is charmed by his good looks. At the same time, Osun also wins by knocking out her male opponent. However, when it's Kan's turn to fight Osun, they seem evenly matched and continue to attack each other in the match. After the training, everyone returns to the dormitory. There, Kan overhears Ganwoo's phone call with Ilj, who agrees to meet at a cafe. At that time, Kan is surprised to hear Ilj's voice, so he decides to follow Ganwoo. At the cafe, Ilj gives Ganwoo some information about the upcoming recruitment exam, where participants have to strategize for a patent dispute case at Dodo Company. Little did they know, Kan was eavesdropping on their conversation. As time passes, the results of the written exam are announced. Ganwoo ranks first, and Ilj is about to declare the official results when Tang interrupts, saying the final results will wait until the ongoing patent dispute case is concluded. Ta Kwang does this because Khan had told him the previous day about Ilj always helping Ganwoo in the exams. Tang is annoyed because, despite working for 20 years, he couldn't get promoted, while Ilj joined the company at a higher position. Later, Osun discovers a crucial figure in the case on a video, but she decides not to tell anyone because the other participants often belittled her. Soon after, she goes to the police station to report her discovery. It turns out that Kaitan and Ganwoo also find out about the person Osun found. However, when they check the video, the police can't identify the man because his appearance was different and his fingerprints were damaged. Still, Khan recognizes the voice to be the same as the man in the video. During the trial of the patent dispute case, Ganwoo's strategy doesn't seem to be working well. Before the trial ends, Khan brings in a crucial witness, but the opposing lawyer claims the witness is invalid. Then, Khan tries to dismantle the evidence he found in the conversation. He asks Ilj to call the phone number from the conversation, and surprisingly, the opposing lawyer's cell phone rings. This proves that the lawyer committed fraud in the trial, and Dodo Group wins the case. At that time, Khan's contribution earns him recognition, and he even meets with Cha. The next day, Ta Kwang gathers all the recruiters and reveals that Dodo Group faces a new problem related to the production of counterfeit drugs, which the media reported on, leading to an increase in cancer patients among those who had been using their products for years. Previously, Chom was furious upon hearing some news, which nearly gave him a heart attack. Then, Ilj informs him that they had found the main suspect, Michael Chung. Soon after, Chom orders Ilj to contact Ta Kwang and seek help from the participants. In the meeting room, the participants are assigned to gather information about the location of a counterfeit drug factory for Michael, who will be attending a party at the consulate in China. At that time, Ta Kwang divides the team into 4 groups and asks Osun and Sue to disguise themselves as party guests. Unfortunately, Osun's outfit is a bit old-fashioned, so Kaitan quickly gives her a more charming look. Afterward, Ta Kwang gives instructions to Osun and Sue on how to complete their task while dancing with Michael. With all the preparations done, including bringing a bugging device, Sue tries to approach Michael for a dance. Unfortunately, just as she's about to attach the bug to Michael's clothes, he receives a call and has to leave. From afar, Ta Kwang closely watches the situation, hoping that Osun will be able to accomplish the task. At the party, Michael, who is attracted to Osun, starts getting close to her and takes her to his hotel room. At that time, Osun accepts the invitation to complete her task of placing a bug in his clothes. She spills his drink when he tries to touch her, giving her the chance to make him change clothes. Meanwhile, Kaitan and Ganwoo become worried when Osun doesn't come out of the hotel room after 30 minutes. They decide to check on her, pretending to be hotel clerks. However, Osun orders them to leave immediately when they enter the room, and she quickly replaces Michael's tie clip with a bug and leaves a note before he comes out of the bathroom. The next day, during the meeting, Ilj assigns Osun's team to complete the mission while the others return to Korea. Not long after, Osun gets contacted by Michael again, and Kaitan and Ganwoo join the team to watch over her. They become jealous witnessing the intimacy between Osun and Michael, and they constantly communicate with her through phones. However, Osun gets annoyed and steps on their feet when Michael leaves. Soon after, Kaitan and Ganwoo approach Osun, urging her to finish the mission quickly, but Michael suddenly returns, making them return to their seats. There, Michael notices their suspicious behavior and gets closer. Then, Khan is forced to kiss Ganwoo to distract Michael from their intentions. Unfortunately, they lose track of Michael and Osun, and they end up blaming each other for the mishap. Shortly after, Michael invites Khan to play cards again because he is curious about why he lost to him before. On the other hand, Ganwoo, not wanting to miss a chance to impress Chom, contacts Michael and exposes Kaitan and Osun as spies from Dodo Group trying to uncover his fake drug factory. Meanwhile, Osun, unaware of her exposed identity, continues enjoying the trip with Michael. At night, Khan meets Michael to play cards, but after having champagne, he suddenly passes out. When he wakes up, he finds himself tied to a chair with a lie detector nearby. Meanwhile, Osun tries to defend herself after her identity is exposed and is taken to the room where Khan is held captive. At that time, Michael orders a man to inject a truth serum to force Khan to reveal everything. However, Khan resists and manages to say that he was tricked into the mission against his will. After being released, Khan confronts Ganwoo, expressing his anger about how Ganwoo wanted to be the best at the expense of their team. Seeing them fight, some men try to separate them, but Khan chooses to leave the place in frustration. On the other hand, Ganwoo bumps into Michael and casually mentions that he wants to buy some fake drugs from Michael's factory. So, Michael decides to take him to the factory to get what he wants. Feeling confident about his relationship with Michael, Ganwoo also tells Kaitan and Ilge about the plan. When they reach the place, Michael, who had planned a trap, quickly orders his men to arrest Ilge and Ganwoo. He warns them not to touch Khan because Khan had previously shared some sensitive information about Ilge killing his parents while under the influence of drugs. Besides, Khan also has a grudge against Dodo Group and wants to team up with Michael. Later, Khan decides to join Michael in selling counterfeit drugs. After Khan leaves, Michael's servant reminds him not to trust Khan too quickly. At that time, Michael thinks of finding a way to confirm Khan's loyalty. When Khan meets Ilge, he suspects that Michael is keeping an eye on them, so Khan carefully avoids saying anything that would raise suspicions. Eventually, Michael starts to believe that Khan is on his side. Sometime later, Michael takes Khan to a ship where all the counterfeit drugs are being produced and circulated. Then, once Khan gets the opportunity, he wastes no time and informs Osun about the fake drug factory's location. He asks her to come with the police. The plan works as Michael's men couldn't make a move. On the other hand, Khan, holding a gun, urges Michael to leave immediately as he didn't consider Michael the real enemy behind the counterfeit drug business. Despite this, Michael seems annoyed, promising to return and then flees. At that time, Khan's success makes Chong very happy, and he personally contacts Khan to reward him as promised for being the best contestant. Moreover, Chong starts giving Khan more assignments. On the other hand, Ilge and Ganwoo are frustrated because they hadn't expected Kaitan to accomplish the mission once again. Meanwhile, on an airplane, Chong's daughter, Du Shinyang, is relaxing while the maids are taking care of her toenails. Suddenly, there is turbulence, and one of the maids accidentally smudges the toenail polish, which makes Shinyang very angry. She treats the maids poorly because of it. On the other hand, Kaitan, who is assigned to pick up Shinyang by Chong, gets some information from Cheram. She tells him that Chong's daughter has a reputation for being arrogant and treating people arbitrarily. Armed with this knowledge, Khan rushes to the airport to pick her up. But when they meet, Shinyang looks down on him, reminding him of his past when he used to nag at his maids. Despite receiving threats of getting fired if he made a mistake in front of Shinyang, Kaitan doesn't really care about it. He immediately takes her to a salon to groom her appearance. However, Shinyang is annoyed, thinking Khan is trying to control her, so she contacts Chong to have him fired. Surprisingly, Chong defends Kaitan and asks his daughter to follow all of Khan's orders. Khan then takes her to the salon's VIP room. At that point, Shinyang has no choice but to go along with Khan's requests. While Osun is in the VIP dressing room at the salon, she spots some clothes that catch her interest. At the same time, Shinyang walks in and looks down on Osun, who is trying on a dress in front of the mirror. Osun tries to explain, but Shinyang doesn't seem to listen, which annoys Osun. In frustration, Osun grabs Shinyang's hair and messes up her look, warning her not to belittle others before storming out of the room. Soon after, Khan enters and is surprised to see a very messy Shinyang. He mumbles about whether she wants to find the woman who ruined her appearance. Then, after Shinyong finishes her makeup, Kan takes her home to meet her parents, who want to introduce her to a young man they have arranged for her to marry. But when they arrive home, Shinyong, who doesn't want the arrangement, suddenly grabs Kan's arm and declares that he is her lover. At that time, everyone is puzzled, including Kan, who tries to signal to Chong that it isn't true. Soon after, Shinyong promptly pulls Kan away from there. Meanwhile, June, annoyed with her daughter's actions, apologizes to the young man named Swan. Strangely enough, because of Shinyang's previous behavior, Swan becomes even more interested in her. In a room, Kan gets annoyed when Shinyang suddenly holds his hand. When he sees Shinyang's parents approaching, he quickly hugs her to make it seem like her attitude was just an act so her parents wouldn't introduce her to the young man they had chosen. The next morning, all the office employees rush to greet the boss's daughter when she arrives. Shinyong recognizes Osun's face and calls her into the room. Osun doesn't know Shinyong is Chong's daughter, so she apologizes and says Shinyong can get back at her for what happened the other day. However, Shinyong refuses and wants to fire Osun. Osun pleads not to be fired because she has to support her sick younger brother, who is in the hospital. Meanwhile, Kan, who is also in the room, remembers his past when someone begged him, so he asks Shinyong not to fire Osun as it could damage her image. After hearing this, Shinyong changes her mind and decides not to fire Osun. On the other hand, Chong's eldest son, Di Kwanggu, serves as CEO of a Dodo Group company. He makes money and uses it to bribe politicians for gambling. Meanwhile, a middle-aged man working at the T9 chemical factory, which belongs to the Dodo Group led by Kwanggu, experiences a gas leak that causes an explosion and results in his death. At the hospital, Park So tells reporters that the accident happened due to exposure to the chemical T9, which is a dangerous carcinogen. Unfortunately, no one believes her. Meanwhile, in Kwanggu's room, he receives a research report stating that people exposed to T9 for over 10 years have a 20% higher chance of getting cancer. Despite the alarming findings, he pays no attention to it and continues selling various products, including cutlery and clothing, containing these harmful substances. A few days later, Park So holds a press conference to expose the Dodo Group's crime of using the dangerous substance T9, leading to an increase in cancer patients among those who have been using their products for years. Meanwhile, during a meeting with the directors, Kwanggu tries to shift the blame, claiming that the increase in cancer cases is due to the weak immune systems of the patients, not their products. After the meeting, one of Kwanggu's close friends suggests he should hold a press conference to address the media reports about his company. Park So's press conference had drawn more attention to their company, making Kwanggu nervous about doing one himself. From a distance, Ilj sees Kwanggu's panicked expression and feels delighted. On the other hand, Kan can't stay silent after watching the news about Park So's press conference. He decides to investigate the case and plans a dinner with Kwanggu at a fancy restaurant. While they are eating, Kan casually mentions that all the cutlery used in the restaurant is from their company's products. At that time, Kwanggu is shocked by this revelation and throws his food away. Seeing Kwanggu's reaction, Kan becomes more convinced that the news about dangerous substances in their products is true, and he is determined to expose it. When Kan meets Cheyenne, she confirms that Kwanggu has made billions by selling T9 products without caring about the negative impact it could have on others. Meanwhile, the worker who had an accident at the factory finally passes away. The doctor who treated him immediately contacts Kwanggu, and Kwanggu asks the doctor to stop the victim's family from carrying out an autopsy. He is worried that if the media finds out about the autopsy results, it could harm his company. Following Kwanggu's instructions, the hospital secretly moves the body without the family's knowledge. When the family arrives at the hospital, they are informed of the victim's death and are offered a large settlement and compensation agreement. The family, who were previously angry, fall silent after seeing the amount of compensation the company is providing. Meanwhile, Kaitan and Sue appear to be infiltrating a place where Kwang-go is involved in an illegal T9 business deal. At that time, Khan, knowing that Sue isn't good at flirting, tries various tactics to get close to Yang Donggi, the head of the place. Unfortunately, all their efforts fail. However, when Sue defends a woman from a man's harassment, Donggi becomes interested in her and even invites her to his room. When Sue distracts Donggi, Kaitan disguises himself as a maid and prepares a drink mixed with sleeping pills, which eventually knocks Donggi out. Together, they search Donggi's room and find a safe containing files related to T9 products. Later on, Ilj becomes curious about Khan's true identity and decides to ask him directly. Khan, not wanting to reveal who he really is, changes the subject and shows Ilj proof of the dangerous T9 usage. Hearing this surprises Ilj and makes him trust Khan as a confidant. Then, as a gesture of friendship, Ilj invites Khan to eat together and gives him a luxury watch as a gift. However, once the meeting is over, Khan, who holds a grudge against Ilj, immediately destroys the watch. Meanwhile, the cancer cases related to Dodo Group's T9 products gain more public and media attention. Some prosecutors also arrest Kwang-go, causing him to panic. He then orders his subordinates to trap the prosecutors in an elevator to buy time and destroy all the evidence related to T9. Just as Kwang-go finishes destroying the evidence, some prosecutors arrive, and he pretends like nothing happened. The next day, while Donggi is still on the trip with Kaitan, he starts to suspect that something is off about the T9 case investigation. There, he realizes that the only person who could uncover the truth is Ilj, so he orders his men to arrest and torture Ilj. Donggi and Kaitan go to the place where Ilj is held. Shortly after, Donggi asks Khan to finish off Ilj, but Khan doesn't want to ruin his plan, which had gained Donggi's trust. So, he pretends to stab Ilj with the knife Donggi had given him while quietly informing Ilj that the police would be coming soon. When the police catch all of Donggi's group, Ilj finally obtains a crucial piece of evidence to put Kwang-go in prison. Soon after, Ilj thanks Khan for his help. Meanwhile, in the car on their way to the prosecutor's office, Kwang-go, accompanied by Osun as his bodyguard, takes advantage of the opportunity to embrace her. On the other hand, Gonwoo, who is driving, can't do anything about it. Then, when they arrive in front of the prosecutor's office, the media crew approach Kwang-go, who claims he is innocent and even willing to give up his wealth if found guilty by the court. After some time, the trial for the T9 case takes place, but the key evidence provided by Ilj is unexpectedly destroyed by someone. Despite this setback, Kwang-go remains relatively calm. However, when Osun appears as a witness and reveals the truth about the company's wrongdoings, including the use of dangerous T9 causing cancer, Kwang-go is finally sentenced to 6 years in prison. Meanwhile, Chung, who watches the trial broadcast at home, faints upon hearing the judge's decision. Then, as Kwang-go walks out of the courtroom in prison clothes, he becomes the target of angry citizens who throw eggs at him. Sadly, he shows no remorse for his actions, which only fuels more hatred toward him. Due to the case, all products from the company are removed from the market, causing Dodo Group's share price to plummet. In prison, Kwang-go orders his subordinates to keep tabs on Osun's whereabouts as he plans to seek revenge once he is released. On the other hand, Osun, now a witness, steps down from her position and becomes an ordinary staff member. She faces ridicule from other employees for exposing the company's secrets and tarnishing its name. Eventually, Kaitan comes to Osun's study and fires her for all she had done, feeling abandoned. Khan tries to console and support her. On another occasion, Khan, who has become Ilj's confidant, gets invited to see Ilj's secret headquarters. There, he learns that Ilj staff controls the software to manipulate Dodo Group's share price, allowing him to buy shares at the lowest price. Then, Ilj also reveals that he invested 50 billion from the sale of Khan's family hospital in buying the shares because he aims to take over the company. Wanting to take down Ilj, Khan contacts Chom anonymously to inform him about Ilj's plan to take over Dodo Group. He even sends a recording of his conversation with Ilj, exposing how the share price decline was caused by his actions. Upon receiving this information, Chom immediately orders an undercover investigation into Ilj. He also instructs his men to find his illegitimate son, Gonwoo, as he doesn't want to lose another son after Kwang's imprisonment. Soon after, Ta Kwang, who was investigating Chong's illegitimate son, informs him that Gonwoo has been close to Chong all along and has recently been accepted into the company. He warns Chong to be cautious, as Gonwoo was educated by Ilj, who is suspected of plotting against Dodo Group. However, Chom is confident that he can win Gonwoo over and turn him against Ilj. Next, Gonwoo summons Chom to meet him. During their meeting, Chom finally recognizes Gonwoo as his son, which deeply moves Gonwoo. Shortly after, Khan calls Chom, asking to meet at a church to discuss Ilj's plans for Dodo Group. After the call, Chom invites Gonwoo to have dinner together at the church. Khan shows a video exposing Ilj's dirty activities with Dodo Group. However, Chom asks Khan to reveal his identity before he can work together with him. There, Khan complies and shows his face to the Dodo Group leadership. Later, Chom Dong informs Ilj that the contract for storing Khan's parents' ashes is about to expire. At that time, Ilj decides not to renew the contract, and Khan overhears this conversation. Soon after, he rushes to the storage place for his parents' ashes, only to find that the officers have disposed of them, even burning a photo of his parents. This deeply saddens Khan as he feels like he has lost his parents for the second time. At that time, a furious Khan vows to get painful revenge on Ilj. One night, he spots Ilj in the parking lot and tries to attack him with an iron pipe. Luckily, Chae Rang intervenes and calms him down, preventing him from acting rashly. A few days later, Chom Dong helps Ilj set up 30 anonymous accounts to buy shares of Dodo Group. Meanwhile, Chae Rang helps Khan set up 30 anonymous accounts to exchange with Ilj's accounts. On another occasion, before Chom Dong hands over the anonymous accounts to Ilj's secret team, Khan and Chom Dong go to a restaurant. There, Khan arranges for a waiter to spill water on Chom Dong, causing him to go to the toilet. During this time, Khan switches the accounts brought by Chom Dong with the ones prepared by Chae Rang. Fortunately, the plan goes smoothly and Ilj's secret staff unknowingly sends funds to Khan's accounts without realizing it. The next day, Ilj's staff checks the anonymous accounts again and is surprised to see that none of the money sent has reached the intended accounts. On the other hand, Kaitan and Chom agree to buy all the shares at 9 a.m. This leaves Ilj in a panic as the money to buy Dodo Group shares has vanished mysteriously. There, he asks Kaitan, who is with him, to contact Chom Dong. Unfortunately, they can't reach Chom Dong's cell phone, which makes Ilj suspicious that Chom Dong has betrayed him. Unbeknownst to Ilj, Chom Dong has been kidnapped by Khan's envoy to be blamed for the missing funds. At that time, Ilj feels trapped and reaches out to John for some funds, but John's connections have been bribed by Chom, so he can't help Ilj. Left with no choice, Ilj has to use his own money. Meanwhile, Khan, knowing about the plan, immediately contacts Chae Rang to create an accident to harm both Ilj and himself after Ilj takes out his personal money. This is their plan to thwart Ilj's attempt to buy Dodo Group shares. At the same time, Chae Rang overhears the plan and expresses concern, but Khan doesn't care as he is solely focused on seeking revenge against Ilj. Later on, Chae Rang and her assistant Shu are preparing in a truck to crash into Khan's car, but just when they reach an intersection, Chae Rang can't go through with hurting Khan, so she steers the truck away. Khan, determined not to let his plan fail, purposely crashes his car into a road divider, injuring himself and making it seem like Ilj was unconscious. Soon after, Chae-rang and Shu quickly take the money Ilj had just withdrawn, call an ambulance, and then leave. Meanwhile, Dodo Group finally wins in the stock market. The next day at the hospital, Ilj wakes up and asks about the stock market results. JSU tells him they lost 300 billion, which makes Ilj extremely frustrated. Shortly after, Jo goes to Kaitan to ask why the plan failed, and Kaitan explains that Cheong-dong betrayed Ilj by changing the anonymous accounts. Cheong-dong is still being held under tight surveillance. After Khan's accident, Cheong visits him and offers to fire Ilj and give Khan a raise. However, Khan asks Cheong to fire him instead so as not to raise suspicion. At that moment, Cheong seems curious about the problems between Khan and Ilj, but he respects Khan's decision not to talk about it. Back at the hospital, Osin, who lost her job, is worried about Kyun's medical expenses, but to her surprise, the nurse tells her that someone has already paid for all her brother's medical bills. At that time, Osin thinks it was Yeon Hanggu, the lawyer who had dealt with the Dodo Group case before. However, it was actually Khan who had asked Hanggu to cover the costs so Osin wouldn't feel burdened. Since Kaitan is also receiving treatment at the hospital, Osin goes to visit him. At the same time, Gonwoo, who is also at the hospital, sees them getting close and feels jealous. He then goes to Ilj and warns him to be cautious around Kaitan, adding to Ilj's confusion about whom to trust. A few days later, Khan is leaving the hospital and wants to say goodbye to Kyun, but as he sees a necklace belonging to Kyun, it reminds him of Junin, and he begins to suspect that Osin might be Junin. So Kaitan calls Osin to meet up, but Gonwoo, who is with her, quickly hangs up the phone, making Khan call several times while mentioning Junin's name. Surprisingly, Ilj overhears Khan mentioning Junin's name and thinks it's his girlfriend's name. Even though Khan tries to explain, Ilj becomes more suspicious of him, thinking he had heard the name before. After being discharged from the hospital, Chae-rang warns Khan not to get too close to Osin as it could harm him, but Khan ignores the warning and waits for Osin at a bus stop until she finally gets on the bus. Meanwhile, Gonwoo, who sees them together, immediately follows the bus they are on. After getting off the bus, Kaitan confesses his feelings to Osin, but she explains that she can't accept his love because she is worried about burdening him due to her sick younger brother. Even though Osin feels the same way for Khan, she decides to let him go because of their difficult circumstances. At that moment, they both look sad as they have to part ways. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Ilj can't stop thinking about the name Junin that Khan mentioned. He remembers a girl named Junin who used to be with Cheol and suspects that Khan might be Cheol. Soon after, Ilj immediately contacts John to warn his in-laws to be careful around Khan and even plans to investigate his true identity through a blood sample. It turns out that Khan overheard this conversation while accompanying John to the office and remembered that he had given a blood sample at the hospital. Then, he quickly contacts Chae-ram after dropping John. Shortly after, Khan asks Chae-ram to go to the hospital and switch his blood sample while Chae-rang distracts Jo. At the hospital, Cho-woo exchanges Khan's blood sample with someone else's. Fortunately, the plan works, and the test results show that Khan is not Cheol, much to Ilj's relief. As a result, Ilj invites Khan to have coffee together, now assured that Khan is not a threat to him. Meanwhile, the corrupt council member John is celebrating at a party after successfully buying and selling low-standard military equipment, leading to various military accidents. At that time, Khan, who has been investigating him, finally gathers the evidence by secretly recording John at the party. Soon after, Cheong cleverly convinces Gonwoo to expose all of John's corrupt actions. After thinking about it, Gonwoo decides to side with Cheong and reveals all the evidence to the court, exposing John's wrongdoings. Then, when John learns that Gonwoo was the one who exposed him, he becomes annoyed and can no longer hide his actions with the incriminating recording against him. On the other hand, Ilj, who is aware of the situation, can't believe that the young man he had been mentoring would betray him. He also feels frustrated because, without John's support, his plans to take over the Dodo group become more difficult. Due to his unstable mental state, he is eventually taken to a mental hospital and even lashes out at Jio when she tries to cheer him up. Meanwhile, the next day, Cheong-dong successfully escapes from captivity and uses a payphone to call Ilj, who is still pretending to be crazy. There, he reveals that Khan is the one causing all their troubles. Ilj had earlier confided in Jio about his plan to continue pretending to be crazy to investigate Khan more easily. After some time, Cheong-dong does some digging and discovers that Khan's real identity is Cheol. Soon after, Ilj asks Cheong-dong to keep an eye on Khan until Khan becomes aware that he's being followed. At that time, Khan cleverly places his cell phone to record the person following him and realizes it's Cheong-dong. So Khan goes straight to the mental hospital to see Ilj, pretending to be Cheol and calling him uncle. There, Ilj continues his act by giving toys to Khan. During their meeting, Khan confidently tells Ilj that even if he's crazy, he won't let him win. Meanwhile, Chong receives news from Shu that they successfully developed a vaccine, but the vaccine design got stolen by Dae-sun, the designer. If they don't find the design soon, their boss, Joy Ryan, won't hesitate to harm them. So, they turn to Kaiton for help in finding the missing vaccine design. During their quick meeting, they discuss Dae-sun, who was originally a vaccine development professor with a gambling problem. When he ran out of money, he stole the vaccine design to sell it at a high price to others. After understanding the situation, Khan decides to assist Chong. The following day, Khan starts his plan and manages to meet Dae-sun to buy back the vaccine design at a high price. Unfortunately, Ganwoo finds out about this and tries to spoil Khan's plans. There, he contacts Dae-sun and tells him that Kaiton is working with Cheram. Upon hearing this news, Dae-sun postpones signing the sale and purchase agreement. On another occasion, Khan is out drinking with his colleagues, but they don't know that Ganwoo's men had mixed sleeping pills in their drinks. Not long after, they all pass out without realizing what happened. Then, when Khan is unconscious, one of Ganwoo's men takes his fingerprints to frame him as an industrial spy. Meanwhile, Ilj has a plan to kill Dae-sun and make Khan the scapegoat so he can easily get the valuable vaccine and make more money. He orders Cheong-dong to kill Dae-sun and place Khan's fingerprints as evidence, leaving Khan unconscious next to Dae-sun's body. At the hospital, Kyun tells Osun that Kaiton is actually Cheol, but when she calls him, Khan doesn't answer because he is still unconscious. Then, Osun decides to visit him in person. When Khan wakes up in the room, he is shocked to see Dae-sun covered in blood. Shortly after, guards enter the room and find Khan holding a tool that Cheong-dong used to beat Dae-sun. There, Khan tries to explain what happened, but sadly, Dae-sun succumbs to his injuries, and Khan is arrested as the prime suspect in the attack. Outside the building, Osun is shocked to see Kaiton in handcuffs. Soon after, Ganwoo appears and claims that Kaiton has killed someone, but Osun doesn't believe it. At the same time, Khan denies the accusation, and as he's taken away by the police, Osun encourages him not to give up. Meanwhile, Ilj continues his plan to ruin Khan's life further. He meets with Kwang-gu and falsely tells him that Khan was the one responsible for his imprisonment. His goal is to make Khan and Kwang-gu fight each other in prison. As planned, Kaiton ends up in the same cell as Kwang-gu, who starts to torment him. A few days later, Ilj pretends to visit Kaiton in prison to taunt him. He claims that Kwang-gu killed Khan's parents, hoping to push Khan to take revenge. However, Khan knows that resorting to violence in prison could lead to a life sentence, so he decides to find another way to seek revenge. At night, Khan meets with Kwang-gu and offers to give him the vaccine design if Kwang-gu helps him escape from prison. Surprisingly, Kwang-gu believes him. At the same time, it's revealed that Hang-gu, who everyone thought was just a lawyer, is actually the head of the Korean intelligence service. He orders S, one of his members, to rescue Kaiton from prison and get the vaccine design. In their plan, S gives Kon food poisoning, which gets him rushed to the hospital. However, on the way, S stops the ambulance and kidnaps Kaiton. When Kaiton wakes up, he's shocked to find out that S is an undercover member of the intelligence service. She asks about the vaccine design, and Kaiton truthfully says he no longer has it, as Ilj took it. Sadly, S doesn't believe him. Meanwhile, Ki-rang, who is Chae-rang's boss, orders her to bring Kon before him to question him about the vaccine design. Unfortunately, Chae-rang, unable to refuse her boss, kidnaps Kon and S, taking them to meet Ki-rang. However, despite Kon repeatedly claiming he doesn't know the vaccine's whereabouts, Ki-rang gets annoyed and orders Chae-ram to torture Kon. There, she reluctantly follows the order, and Kon looks sick from the pain. Seeing how strong Kon is, Ki-rang starts to respect him. On another occasion, Kon and S attempt to escape. When Ki-rang finds out, he realizes Kon is a tough guy and decides to recruit him as part of his gang. He immediately orders Chae-rang to find Kaiton. When she tells Shu about this, he gets irritated because he had been working for Ki-rang for years and had never been treated as special as Kon, whom he had only known for a few days. Feeling annoyed, Shu plans to kill Ki-rang and steal the vaccine design to escape with Chae-rang, whom he has feelings for. However, Chae-rang doesn't feel the same way about Shu and immediately informs Kaiton about the plan. They decide to leave together and start a new life outside Korea. Soon after, Chae-rang expresses her feelings for Kaiton, but he couldn't accept it, choosing to refuse her offer to spare her feelings. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Kyun may be mentally challenged, but he has excellent photographic memory skills. Shortly after, Hanggu and Osun ask for Kyun's help in examining the vaccine design, which is difficult to replicate. With Kyun's assistance, they obtain a drawing of the vaccine design, which Osun takes a photo of to send to Kon, who is still in hiding as an escaped prisoner. Soon after, Kyun turns the paper with the vaccine design into a paper airplane toy and flies it around. At that time, Cheong-dong and Ilj, who are in the hospital, find him. Worried about the design getting into the wrong hands, they end up killing Kyun by injecting him with a drug that causes heart failure. On the other hand, Osun, who lost her younger brother, is heartbroken. Meanwhile, Ilj is secretly happy because he did it to lure Kon out of hiding. At that time, Kon, feeling guilty for Kyun's death, has no choice but to stay hidden. Sometime later, Kon meets with Chae-ram and asks her to arrange a meeting with Ki-rang because he wants to hand over the vaccine design. During the meeting, Chae-rang and Shu plan to kill Ki-rang and take the design for themselves. But just as Shu shoots, Kon hears the gunshot and quickly protects Ki-rang, taking a gunshot wound to his head in the process. It turns out that Shu also has a backup plan to blow up Ki-rang's car, but Chae-rang stops him. Not wanting to lose Kaiton, she drops the bomb remote and warns Ki-rang to get away from the car. Then, she shoots Shu, and as Ki-rang's car explodes, both Kaiton and Ki-rang survive thanks to Chae-rang's quick thinking and warning. At that moment, Ki-rang tells his subordinates to report that Kon and S died in the explosion. Meanwhile, he makes sure the best doctors treat Kon's head wound, though they couldn't guarantee his safety. Nevertheless, Ki-rang insists on doing everything possible to save Kon's life. On the other side, news of Kon's supposed death spreads, and Ilj tries to confirm it by reaching out to Chae-ram. When she confirms that Kon is indeed dead, Ilj looks pleased because he thinks he doesn't have to worry about dealing with Kon anymore. At Ki-rang's place, the doctor informs them that Kaiton is in a coma. Soon after, Ki-rang decides to take Kaiton to China for the best medical treatment. S also promises to take care of Kaiton until he wakes up. Meanwhile, Osun, who lost her younger brother, decides to take the bar exam again, hoping to confront Ilj in the future. After a year of hard work, Osin manages to have her own law firm. On the other hand, Khan wakes up from a coma but struggles with head pain and blurry memories of his past. To help him, Ki-rang arranges for Khan to have hypnosis therapy with Professor Chen. But here's the twist. Chang secretly meets the professor and asks him to erase all of Khan's memories of Osin. After the therapy, Khan's condition improves, and he thanks Ki-rang for protecting him. Ki-rang then asks Khan to be his son, and Khan happily accepts, calling him his father. They officially make it official through the adoption process. With his new family, Khan feels more confident about facing Ilge. On the other hand, Kwang-gu, who comes out of prison and fires Ta Kwang to bounce back, decides to use all his savings to open a fried chicken shop. Unfortunately, his business fails, and he ends up in debt. To make matters worse, Kwang-gu mocks him, which makes Ta Kwang want revenge. It turns out that Lee Swak, who also got fired from the same company, opens a tavern and often meets Ta Kwang, who is going through a rough time just like him. Now, Kaitan, who is back in Korea, hears about Ta Kwang and Swak's struggles. He decides to invite them to work together to defeat Ilge. For this, Chae-rang meets Ta Kwang and Swak to deliver Khan's invitation. Finally, they all meet at Khan's place. While they wait for him, they dig into the food laid out. When Khan arrives, he gives some money to Ta Kwang to help him pay off his debts and get back on his feet. On the other hand, Ilge is all busy with his campaign to become the mayor of Seoul, but out of the blue, Khan shows up and drops a bombshell on him, predicting that Ilge is going to die soon. At that time, Ilge is freaked out because Khan had disappeared for a long time, and now he's back with this eerie news. Then, S tells Khan that Chae-rang is acting suspiciously, so she taps Chae-rang's phone. It turns out that Chae-rang received a call from Ilge, and Khan overhears their conversation. He's furious because it seems like she betrayed them. Then Khan orders her arrest and punishment according to the organization's rules for traitors. Soon after, Khan decides he'll personally execute Chae-ram. He asks everyone else to wait outside the room while he talks to her. But surprise, she confesses her feelings for Khan, and he spares her life. Since she wants to be on his side, he fakes her execution with a gunshot, fooling everyone into thinking she's dead. Later, when he leaves the room, Khan tells Ta Kwang, who is in on the plan, to take care of Chae-ram from now on. The following day, Chae-ram becomes Khan's secret spy by pretending to be on Ilge's side. She tells him that Khan's organization is after her. Meanwhile, Khan watches the news on TV and sees Osin seeking revenge against Ilge, trying to ruin his chances of becoming mayor of Seoul. At that time, Khan feels like he knows her from somewhere, but his memory is fuzzy, and it gives him a headache. So everyone around him keeps Osin's secrets hidden. But here's the twist. After watching Osin's TV program, Khan decides to team up with her to expose Ilge's scandal through the same program. Time goes by, and just when Ilge is sure he'll be the mayor of Seoul, Khan suddenly exposes a scandal from years ago, revealing that Ilge had an affair with Jio. Khan questions if someone like Ilge, who did such things, deserves to be mayor. After the broadcast, Ilge tries to see Khan, but he's stopped by the guards. Ta Kwang tells him that Khan isn't just anybody now, so he can't meet him easily. Hearing that, Ilge gets upset and goes back home. Then, surprisingly, Ilge hires Osin, who is trying to bring him down, as his legal advisor so she can work closely with him. Gonwoo, who knows about this, gets angry at Ilge and warns him not to harm her, but Ilge and his men don't hold back and beat up Gonwoo badly. After Ilge leaves, Osin, who overheard their conversation, rushes to help Gonwoo and hugs him. And here's the interesting part. Khan sees this incident and feels jealous for some reason. On another occasion, Gonwoo sees Khan leading a company during a collaboration signing for a ship contract with a Chinese company. He's shocked because he thought Khan was reported dead. During the process, Gonwoo realizes that Kaitan doesn't remember Osin, so he asks Swak about it. Then, at night, Ganwoo visits Osin because he's worried about losing her after Khan's sudden reappearance. The next day, Osin spots someone who looks exactly like Kaitan. She tries to catch up with him but can't, so she waits in the rain at that spot. As night falls, Khan returns to the street and is surprised to find Osin standing there all alone in the rain. Just as Khan is about to leave, he sees Osin faint, and he immediately rushes to help her. At the hospital, he calls Ganwoo, thinking Osin is his lover. When Osin wakes up, she sees Ganwoo waiting for her, but she knows it was actually Kaitan who helped her. The next day, Ganwoo notices Osin handing out flyers about Kaitan, so he decides to arrange a meeting between them. At that time, she is overjoyed to see Kaitan alive and hugs him, but he suddenly pulls away, not recognizing her. The memories start flooding back, giving him a headache. Soon after, Ta Kwang enters the room and quickly takes Khan to get emergency treatment from Chin. Then, Swak finally tells Osin about Khan's condition. After checking on Khan, Chin meets with Osin and tells her that his hypnosis therapy got messed up because Khan loved her so much. Every time he remembered her, he'd feel pain. So the only way to make him feel better was to erase all memories of her. At that time, Osin didn't want Khan to suffer, so she agreed and even gave him a farewell kiss. When Khan wakes up after the therapy, he can't remember who Osin was. Still, she smiles happily because he seems to be improving. On the other hand, due to Ilj's scandal of having affairs, he loses popularity and hires people to pretend they were being attacked by thugs. He acts like a hero, gaining more popularity and lying to the public. But then, a mercenary attacks Geo, causing her injuries. Ilj uses this incident to gain sympathy by inviting the media and saying his wife needs serious surgery, even though Geo's injuries aren't severe. His acting makes the public feel sorry for him. Still, he isn't satisfied, so he tells Chae-ram that he wants certainty to become mayor. But then, Chae-rang suggests that Ilj should get support from the other candidates and make them quit the race. Hearing that, Ilj agrees. But Chae-rang secretly tells Ta Kwang that she has evidence of Ilj's bribery for the mayoral election. Then Khan tells Ta Kwang to destroy all the evidence once Ilj becomes mayor. Later, Kwang-gu informs Ilj that Osin is investigating his secret funds. At that time, Ilj doesn't want others to find out about his bribery, so he immediately orders Cheong-dong to get rid of Osin. Shortly after, he kidnaps Osin, and by chance, Ganwoo sees it happen. He follows the car that took Osin. Meanwhile, Chae-rang overhears Ilj ordering his men to eliminate Osin, so she tells Kaitan about it. Soon after, Khan finds out about it, and he hurries to find Osin. Meanwhile, Cheong-dong has already thrown Osin into the river, but Ganwoo saves her soon after. When Kaitan reaches the spot, Ganwoo is giving Osin first aid by the river. Thankfully, she is safe, and Ganwoo feels relieved and happy. On the other hand, Khan knows that if Ilj finds out Osin is alive, he'll keep searching for her. So he asks her to stay in China for a while. Ganwoo agrees as it's the safest place to deceive Ilj. They spread the news that Osin had disappeared. Meanwhile, back at Ilj's house, he returns drunk after celebrating his supposed success against Osin. At that time, Ju notices lipstick marks on his shirt and questions Chae-rang about it, suspecting her husband had been with his secretary alone. However, Chae-rang doesn't pay much attention to her questions. On another occasion, John finally catches Ilj hugging Chae-rang. He is really mad at his son-in-law, but he can't do anything because Ilj is about to become the mayor of Seoul, and that would make it easier for John in his political career. So he has to pretend he doesn't know about Ilj's affair with Chae-rang. On election day, as expected, Ilj becomes the mayor of Seoul, and Khan suddenly shows up to congratulate him. But then some prosecutors arrive and arrest Ilj on charges of breaking election laws and other crimes. Then Khan whispers that this is just the beginning of the game Ilge should enjoy. At the police station, Ilge is shocked to see Osun appearing before him, even though he thought she was dead. He feels trapped by all the cases against him and tries to get help from John, but he refuses. However, after Gio keeps persuading him, John changes his mind. He then orders his men to investigate Chae-rang, who seems suspicious. Soon enough, they provide evidence that Chae-rang was a spy sent by Khan to monitor Ilge's movements. At the police station, Ilge's life barely changes because he bribed the top police officials. So after dinner, he gets released pending further investigation. On another occasion, John confronts Ilge and provides evidence that Chae-rang is Khan's spy. After knowing that, Ilge plans to deceive her by giving false information that he will harm the witness in his case. Soon after, Chae-rang gets the info and tells Khan, who decides to protect the witness. While Khan is busy rescuing the witness, Ilge sends his underlings to threaten the witness's family. They warn him not to tell the truth or his family will be in danger. Meanwhile, John locks Chae-rang in a mental rehabilitation center and ties her hands to prevent her from testifying at Ilge's trial. With this plan, Ilge manages to win his first trial. Meanwhile, Khan can't get in touch with Chae-rang and feels worried that she might be in danger, so he goes to see Ilge and pretends he won the trial, thanking Chae-rang for helping trick him. Once Ilge leaves, Chae-rang tries to untie herself and uses a bracelet Ta Kwang had given her to let Khan track her location. Later, during the second round of Ilge's trial, just when it seems like he will win again, Khan shows up with Chae-rang, whom he had rescued. There, she testifies in court, and Ganwoo even presents footage from his car's camera showing how Ilge's men kidnapped Osun. With all the evidence and testimonies, the judge finds Ilge guilty and sentences him to 5 years in prison. Time passes, and one day, Kaitan, disguised as a prison guard, attacks Ilge, telling him that prison will be his nightmare. In the cell, Ilge acts arrogantly, refusing to eat with the other inmates and always taking the food first. When the other inmates protest, Chong, who is also in the same cell, defends Ilge by beating up the inmates who don't comply with his rules. The next day, Ganwoo meets Ilge in prison and tells him that he has evidence of Ilge's other crimes that could ruin his life. Ganwoo offers to buy Ilge's company at a low price if he doesn't want the evidence exposed. After the meeting, Ilge gets so frustrated that he even beats up his cellmate for no reason. Another day, when Chong Dong is called away by the prison, Ilge is left alone, and his cellmates, annoyed by his previous behavior, beat him up. Then, when Gio and John visit Ilge, John looks disappointed to see his son-in-law's battered appearance, as if he has no power in prison. He starts thinking he won't help Ilge anymore. Later, Ganwoo comes back to ask about his previous offer, but Ilge refuses to sell his company. At that time, he remains calm and predicts that Ilge will eventually agree while they're having coffee. Even though Ilge tries to resist, he ends up unconscious, and Ganwoo quickly sets up his plan by placing Ilge's fingerprints as a sign of the company being sold. Meanwhile, at Khan's residence, he receives news that his company has licensed the 2 Malawian Quachas vaccine in both Korea and America. So Khan decides to sell the vaccine at half the wholesale price, aiming to make Ilge's company go bankrupt soon. On the other hand, Ilge already knows about Khan obtaining the vaccine license. He sends him a message revealing that Ganwoo has taken over his company, making Khan's efforts to bring down his uncle useless. There, Ilge also tells Ganwoo about Khan getting the vaccine license. However, Ganwoo gets annoyed upon hearing this and sets up a meeting with Kaitan. Later, Kaitan goes to Ganwoo's office and sees a picture of Ganwoo with Osun. Then he asks why Osun seems so close to him. But before Ta Kwang can answer, Ganwoo enters and snatches the photo from Khan's hand. There, he reveals that he will marry Osun soon and warns Kaitan not to interfere. At night, Ganwoo wants Osun to fall in love with him, So he lets himself get beaten up by some gangsters who were after her. It turns out that made her start to sympathize with him. Meanwhile, Khan is back at his place, still thinking about the photo he saw of Osun. Swak finally reveals that Osun's younger brother had helped Khan a lot in the past, but Ilj had killed him. Osun had also been supportive of him in seeking revenge against Ilj. Although Swak mentions some things about Osun, he doesn't reveal that Kaitan and she had a past affair. Feeling guilty, he goes to where Kyun's ashes are kept and sees a photo of Kyun wearing the same necklace as him. This makes Kaitan even more suspicious that his relationship with Osun in the past was more than just friendship. On the other hand, Gonwoo, who got hurt, is taken to the hospital by Osun, which makes him happy because she shows concern for him, the woman he likes. However, when Osun leaves, she forgets her phone in Gonwoo's ward. Not long after, Khan calls her, but Gonwoo picks up and tells Khan that he won't have Osun even if Khan remembers their past together. Hearing this, Khan gets really upset. Shortly after, Ta Kwang enters the room and informs Kaitan that Gonwoo is in the hospital after being attacked by some gangsters. Ta Kwang suspects they were Ilj's men, which makes Khan distrustful of Ilj for doing such a reckless thing. At that time, Kaitan wants to know the truth about the beating incident, so he goes to see Ilj. However, Ilj claims it was Gonwoo's plan, not his. After getting out of prison, Khan goes to the hospital to check on things and sees Gonwoo and Osun kissing on the hospital building's roof. After seeing them together, Kaitan feels hurt by all this. Then, he becomes determined to learn about his past with Osun. The next day, he goes to Cheram to ask about Osun's relationship with him. There, Cheram finally explains that Osun was a woman who always helped and supported him, even when Khan was imprisoned because of Ilj. It turns out that Osun had no intention of leaving him, even though Kyun became a victim while helping Khan in his fight against Ilj. After meeting Cheram, Khan plans to meet Osun, but Ta Kwang stops him. Ta Kwang reminds Khan that their current goal is revenge against Ilj and warns him not to get caught up in romance until they achieve their revenge. At that time, Khan thinks about Ta Kwang's words and decides to focus on solving the problem with Ilj first. On the other hand, without Khan knowing, Gonwoo invites Ilj to work together to destroy Kaitan. They secretly destroy all the evidence of their crimes without Osun's knowledge, causing Ilj to be acquitted in court due to a lack of evidence from the prosecution. After the trial, Khan tells Osun that if Ilj can't be brought to justice, he will take matters into his own hands to punish him. On the other hand, Chom is diagnosed with dementia and paralysis, which means Gonwoo's father has less than 6 months to live. Then Gonwoo takes advantage of his father's condition to gain Osun's sympathy and proposes to her. Surprisingly, she agrees to become his fiancée. Another time, Gonwoo looks for someone with similar handwriting to forge Ilj's signature on the contract. Then Gonwoo pressures Cheong Dong to testify against Ilj in court, threatening him with Ilj's crimes as a warning. Meanwhile, Ilj's lawyer offers the judge a bribe, but the judge refuses because the bribe is too small and even demands a 100 million won bribe from the Dodo Group. Hearing the judge's demand, Ilj becomes more nervous about losing the trial. On the day of Ilj's final trial, Cheram and Shu bring evidence to the court that Gonwoo had fabricated to destroy Ilj, making it look like he was the one who stole the vaccine and used the stolen design for his benefit. Then, Gonwoo suddenly confesses that he was the one behind all the crimes and agrees to testify against Ilj in court. Hearing this shocks everyone in the courtroom. However, just as the trial is about to conclude, Osun suddenly shows up to give her testimony. Surprisingly, she offers new evidence of Ilj's crimes in a USB drive that Kyun had found earlier. After this, the court finally convicts Ilj, and he's sentenced to 20 years in prison. After the trial, Khan talks to Osun and thanks her for everything she has done to help him get justice. At that time, Osun decides to let Khan go and move on with her life. Meanwhile, Il's imprisonment means that Ganwoo has taken over Dodo Group. But soon after, the shareholders, who lost trust in the company, force him to step down as CEO. Then, Kaiton decides to go to America to start a new life. Osin, who receives an invitation from Kaiton, feels happy that he finally achieved his revenge and could move on. As she sees him off at the airport, she wishes him well in his new life in America. On the other hand, Kaiton arrives in America and lives as a businessman, focusing on growing his company and his family's future. After a few years, Ganwoo finally comes to America, working for Kaiton and trying to rebuild his life. Then one day, as Kaiton visits Kyun's grave, he sees Osin from afar with a child by her side. He doesn't approach them but watches them from a distance with a smile, feeling grateful for all that happened and the chance to live a peaceful life. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more great content, and click the bell icon to get notified whenever we post something new.